The sun beat down on Marcus's beat-up sedan, the kind of relentless heat only Texas could deliver. He'd been driving for what felt like an eternity, the endless desert highway stretching out before him like a shimmering mirage. Visiting Grandma and Grandpa in their remote Texan farmhouse always meant a grueling drive from Utah, but this time, something felt off. A gnawing unease had settled in his gut since he crossed the state line. And now, the gas gauge was dipping precariously close to E. Great, he muttered, his voice hoarse from hours of singing along to questionable 90s rock. He squinted, scanning the horizon for any sign of civilization. Finally, a flickering neon sign appeared in the distance. A gas station, a beacon in the desolate expanse. Relief washed over him, quickly followed by a shiver that had nothing to do with the weak AC. The gas station looked like it had been abandoned for decades, a relic from a forgotten era. The sign, barely legible, read, "Gus's Grub and Gas." The paint on the building was peeling, a forlorn shade of faded yellow, and dust devils danced in the oppressive heat. An ancient, rusted pickup truck sat crookedly by the pumps, its tires flat, its windows dark. No other cars were around. Marcus pulled up to a pump, the crunch of gravel under his tires disturbingly loud in the silence. He killed the engine, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The silence was absolute, save for the buzzing of unseen insects and the distant caw of a crow. He hesitated for a moment, an instinct screaming at him to just keep driving, but the empty gas tank overruled his apprehension. He got out, the heat hitting him like a physical blow. The air was thick and stagnant, heavy with the scent of dust and something else, something faintly metallic, like old blood. He glanced at the gas station convenience store. The windows were grimy, obscuring the interior, but a single flickering fluorescent light hummed within, casting an eerie glow. As he reached for the pump, a low, guttural growl echoed from behind the rusted pickup truck. Marcus froze, every hair on his arm standing on end. He slowly turned, his heart hammering against his ribs. Nothing. Just the truck, motionless and desolate. He must be imagining things, the long drive playing tricks on his mind. He started pumping gas, the rhythmic glugging of fuel into his tank the only sound. Then a shadow detached itself from the side of the convenience store. It was a man, tall and gaunt, wearing a faded mechanic's jumpsuit. His face was obscured by the brim of a greasy baseball cap, but he could feel his eyes on him. "Evenin'," he drawled, his voice raspy like sandpaper. "Lost, are ya?" Marcus jumped, spilling a little gas on his hand. No, just filling up, heading to my grandparents' farm." The mechanic chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Farm? That's a good ways out. Not many folks pass through here anymore." He shuffled closer, and Marcus noticed the way his movements were unnaturally slow, almost jerky. His skin had a pallid, waxy quality in the dim light. "Well, my GPS said this was the last stop for a while," Marcus replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. He finished pumping and fumbled for his wallet. "How much do I owe you?" The mechanic just stared at him, unblinking. "No charge for you, son. Not for new customers." The last two words were delivered with a chilling emphasis that sent a fresh wave of dread through him. Before Marcus could respond, the mechanic pointed a long, bony finger at the convenience store. "But Gus, he likes a visit. Says it gets mighty lonely out here." Marcus swallowed hard. He just wanted to pay and leave. Okay, I'll just pop in and say hi then. He walked towards the convenience store, the mechanic's unblinking gaze following him. The door creaked open with a mournful groan, revealing a cramped, dimly lit interior. The air inside was even colder than outside, despite the Texan heat, and it smelled of dust, decay, and something else. Something sweet and cloying, like wilting flowers. Behind the counter sat an elderly man, impossibly old, with a skeletal frame and eyes that seemed to glow in the gloom. This had to be Gus. His skin was translucent, stretched taut over sharp cheekbones, and his lips were drawn back in a perpetual, unsettling grin. He wasn't moving, just sitting perfectly still, his gaze fixed on the entrance. "Evenin', son," he whispered, his voice a dry, rattling cough that sounded like crumbling bones. "Come on in. We don't get many visitors these days." Marcus took a hesitant step inside. The shelves were mostly empty, save for a few dusty cans and what looked like ancient, petrified snacks. A single, fly-infested light fixture hummed overhead, casting long, dancing shadows. "Just needed some gas," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. He reached for his wallet again. Gus's grin widened, revealing yellowed, uneven teeth. "Oh, we know what you need, boy. We know all about it." His head slowly tilted to the side, a movement that seemed to defy the laws of anatomy. "You see, we've been waiting for someone like you." A sudden noise made Marcus jump. A soft thud from the back room. Gus's eyes, those glowing pinpricks of light, darted towards the sound, then back to Marcus. "Just the usual inventory check," Gus whispered, his gaze unwavering. "But tell me, son, do you enjoy your drive? The scenery, it's quite breathtaking, isn't it?" Marcus felt a prickle of cold sweat on his forehead. It's a long drive." "Indeed, and it's a long road ahead, too, especially for those who stray from the path." He let out a dry, rattling cough that sounded like crumbling bones. "We like to help folks stay a while." As Gus spoke, Marcus noticed something else. On a dusty shelf behind Gus, nestled among faded postcards, was a photograph. It was old and sepia-toned, showing a young family standing in front of this very gas station. But it wasn't the picture itself that sent a jolt of pure terror through him. It was the face of the man behind the counter in the photograph, a younger but unmistakably identical Gus. And next to him, standing by a pump, was the mechanic, looking just as gaunt and unsmiling. They hadn't aged a day. Panic clawed at his throat. He backed away slowly, his eyes still fixed on the photograph. He understood now. This place wasn't just old, it was timeless. And Gus and his mechanic, they weren't just proprietors. They were something else entirely. He bolted. The dusty door slammed shut behind him with a deafening thud, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the oppressive silence. He scrambled into his car, fumbling with the keys, his hands shaking so violently he almost dropped them. The engine roared to life, a symphony of salvation. He jammed the car into reverse, tires spitting gravel as he floored it, the gas station quickly shrinking in his rearview mirror. But as he sped away, he glanced one last time at the fading neon sign of Gus's Grub and Gas. And there, standing by the rusted pickup truck, were Gus and the mechanic side by side. They weren't waving, or even moving. They were just watching, their faces obscured by the growing distance. Yet he could feel their eyes on him, a silent, malevolent promise hanging in the air. Marcus didn't stop. Didn't look back. He drove, pushing the speed limit, the gas gauge now thankfully full. But the chill of that gas station, the unnerving grin of Gus, and the mechanic's hollow eyes had carved themselves into his memory. He knew, with a horrifying certainty, that some roads, once traveled, could never truly be left behind. And somewhere in the vast, empty expanse of Texas, Gus and his mechanic were still waiting, their timeless vigil continuing for the next lost traveler to pull into their hunted haven.
The hum of the road was a lullaby, a steady counterpoint to the soft rock playing on the radio. Laura leaned her head against the window, watching the endless blur of green pass by. Thomas, ever the careful driver, kept his eyes on the road, a faint smile playing on his lips. 5 years. 5 years since their first awkward date at a local diner in Tulsa. 5 years of shared laughter, quiet evenings, and the comforting rhythm of their lives. Now they were on their way to a luxurious resort in Florida, a much-anticipated anniversary trip. "Almost there," Thomas said, his voice a low rumble. "Just a few more hours, babe." Lauren nodded, feeling a contented sigh escape her. "Can't wait to see the ocean again." Suddenly, a small orange light glowed on the dashboard. Thomas glanced down, his smile faltering. Uh-oh. Laura sat up, a knot forming in her stomach. "What's uh-oh?" "The gas light," he said, a hint of exasperation in his tone. "Didn't you fill it up last night?" Laura's mind raced. They'd been so busy packing, so excited. "Oh no, I totally forgot, Thomas. I'm so sorry." He sighed, running through his hair. It's fine. We'll find a station." He scrolled through his phone, muttering, "Looks like there's one about 10 miles ahead. Bob's Gas and Go." The last few miles were a tense silence, the fuel gauge steadily dropping. When they finally spotted the station, it was less a beacon of hope and more a relic from a forgotten era. The sign, half rusted and barely legible, creaked in the breeze. The building itself was a faded, peeling white, surrounded by a few abandoned vehicles that looked like they'd been left for dead. A single, flickering fluorescent light illuminated the pump area. "Well," Laura said, trying to sound optimistic, "it's gas, right?" Thomas pulled up to the only working pump. As he got out, a figure emerged from the shadows of the small convenience store. He was a large man, his face obscured by the dim light, but Laura could sense a menacing presence. He wore a stained mechanic's jumpsuit, and his movements were slow, deliberate. "Evening," the man said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that sent a shiver down Laura's spine. "Don't get many folks out this way anymore." "Just passing through," Thomas replied, trying to sound friendly. "Running a little low on gas." "Bob's the name," the man said, a glint in his eye as he stepped closer, revealing a face etched with hard lines and a disturbing lack of warmth. "Been running this place for a while now. Took over from the last owners. They, disappeared." Laura's heart pounded. The way he said disappeared sent chills down her spine. Thomas, sensing her unease, quickly filled the tank, his movements a little too hurried. "Well, thanks, Bob," Thomas said, attempting a polite farewell. "We appreciate it." "Oh, you'll be here for a while," Bob said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. He held up a wrench, and with a swift, brutal motion, he smashed the car's windshield. Glass exploded inwards. Panic seized Laura. "Thomas, run!" But it was too late. Bob moved with surprising speed, grabbing Thomas in a vice-like grip. Thomas struggled, but Bob was far stronger. Laura screamed, fumbling for her phone, but Bob merely chuckled. "No signal out here, honey," he drawled, tightening his grip on Thomas. He dragged Thomas towards the back of the convenience store, a dark, foreboding alleyway. Laura, her mind racing, knew she had to act. She spotted an old, rusty fire extinguisher near the pump. With trembling hands, she grabbed it, her breath catching in her throat. As Bob wrestled Thomas towards a bolted metal door, Laura charged, unleashing a spray of white foam directly into Bob's face. He roared in surprise and pain, momentarily releasing Thomas. "Go, Thomas, go!" Laura yelled, her voice hoarse. Thomas, coughing and disoriented, stumbled towards her. Bob, wiping his eyes, let out a guttural growl and lunged. Laura swung the heavy extinguisher, connecting with a sickening thud against Bob's head. He staggered, then fell to his knees, momentarily stunned. "The keys!" Laura cried, remembering Thomas had the car keys. They scrambled into the car, Laura fumbling with the ignition. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. As Thomas slammed his foot on the gas, they heard a bellow of rage from behind them. Bob was back on his feet, stumbling towards the car, a look of pure fury on his face. They sped out of the gas station, the gravel spitting from beneath their tires. Laura risked a glance in the rearview mirror. Bob stood in the flickering light, a grotesque silhouette, shaking his fist at their retreating car. They drove for what felt like an eternity, not daring to stop until they reached the next town, a small, brightly lit diner. Inside, surrounded by the comforting sounds of clinking silverware and chatter, they finally felt safe. That was the worst anniversary ever, Laura said, her voice still trembling. Thomas reached across the table, taking her hand. "But we're alive, and we're together." Laura looked at him, then at her hand, still red from gripping the fire extinguisher. "I think," she said, a small, shaky laugh escaping her, "I'll be filling up the tank from now on." They were about to order coffee when the door diner chimed. Laura looked up, and her blood ran cold. Standing in the doorway, wearing a freshly laundered Bob's Gas and Go uniform, was Bob. His face was clean, his hair neatly combed, and he wore a polite, unsettling smile. "Evening, folks," he said, his voice a calm, smooth baritone, utterly devoid of the gravelly menace they remembered. "Table for two? Or perhaps you'd prefer the special, the disappearing act?" Laura and Thomas stared, frozen in their seats, their minds struggling to reconcile the friendly diner owner with the monster from the gas station. Bob winked, a slow, deliberate gesture that chilled them to the bone. "Just kidding," he said, his smile widening, revealing perfectly white teeth. "Mostly. Welcome to Bob's Diner. Best damn coffee this side of, well, you know." He gestured vaguely in the direction they had come from. He pulled out a notepad. "So, what can I get you two, lovebirds? And don't worry about the check. It's on the house. Consider it a complimentary anniversary gift." As Bob led them to a booth, Laura and Thomas exchanged a terrified glance. The gas station was miles behind them. How could he be here? And that chilling smile, they realized with a dawning horror that they hadn't escaped Bob at all. They had simply driven into another one of his establishments, another step in his endless, terrifying game. The faint smell of gasoline and something metallic, like old blood, wafted from behind the counter, mingling with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. They were trapped, not by a physical barrier, but by a chilling, inescapable presence that seemed to permeate every corner of this forgotten highway. And they knew, with a certainty that made their stomachs churn, that the disappeared customers weren't just a distant memory. They were probably still here, in one form or another, just waiting for the next unlucky travelers to pull off the main road.